Okay, Anshuman, it's five past five. I guess we can start now. People will keep
Okay,
joining, and that's
sure.
fine.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. First of all, it's fantastic to have all of you here. I am Rizal Srivastav, and I shall be your host for the evening. As much excited I am to see the participant count growing every minute, I am probably even more excited to welcome Mr. Anshuman Acharya, our guest on this pilot episode of Rendezvous. Before we get started, I would like to inform you that there will be a feedback form circulated at the end of the session, and I request you guys to fill it at the time. Okay, Anshuman, now ideally this would have been a physical stage and I would have called for an applause to welcome you. But today we'll have to settle for a little casual conversation between us in which we will get to know more about you and your perspective on the R&D industry, followed by an AMA round towards the end where the forum will remain open to interaction for the audience. I hope that sounds good.
Yeah, that's great.
That's perfect, perfect. Again, I'm so happy to have you here. And without much further ado for the audience, Anshuman, how about you tell us something about yourself, something that we absolutely must know?
Okay. Well, starting off, I would like probably just introduce myself. Like, I am Anshuman Acharya. I just completed my bachelor's and master's in physics from ISA Mohali. Like, we had a graduation in June, so it's
Mhm.
just been it's very fresh and everything. And now I would be going for my PhD at Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics at Garching in Germany, where I'll be basically working in the field of computational astrophysics, which combines quite a few words together, but we can basically get into that gradually.
Right.
So yeah, like this is quite a fascinating event where we can discuss, and it is like best to go slowly into it. Like for
Hmm.
example, like we are going to talk about scientific research, and that's where basically my story begins from. So research in itself sounds very cool, but and it is a bit confusing because it happens in pretty much all fields. And there are mainly two major components of it. The one which is more obvious would be the applied research, where we are basically trying to find real world applications for whatever knowledge, using whatever knowledge we have so far. The most popular examples being obviously engineering and biomedical research, where like for example the creation of the vaccines for COVID-19 is a
Right.
application of knowledge that we have about how viruses function, how
Hmm.
vaccines are made, and how we can basically improve them. But
Hmm.
however, that means applied research has to draw from something, and that is the basic research that we have. Basic science research basically is simply about answering questions and building the base of knowledge that we have about a variety of subjects, be it anything like from statistics to physics to even economics. Everything has a basis for which we build, and then if we have anything that we can apply to our real world, then we draw from that. So applied research is what showcases things that affect us in our daily lives, but basic research is basically the bedrock from which applied research derives its strengths from. So there
Right.
are fields from virology to economics where we have research going on, and even AI and history and everything. But obviously, like in my case, my field is astrophysics, which is quite a fascinating topic because it covers from the scales of planets to the scales of the entire universe. So there's a lot of things going on. Like there are various experiments, various or terrestrial and orbital telescopes which are being used, and even clusters, supercomputers, and everything. From like everything that we have is like state of the art technology of humanity is being used in this subject. So there are many things to study, and in my case there is, it seems like I have been taking a long-ish path, and that is quite common in research. For example, for becoming an astrophysicist, the field draws people from a lot of different backgrounds, but the most common is obviously a physics degree. But there are always people who come from other backgrounds. Like for example, if somebody is doing computer science, somebody is doing electrical engineering, even mechanical engineering, instrumentation, and everything leads has some basis that can be added to astronomy by using their knowledge in those subjects. So what they typically do is that if you have this kind of knowledge and then you have a master's degree in physics or astrophysics, then you can go for a PhD in astrophysics, where you basically start contributing to the field actively. So in my case, I like in your case, if there are people who are doing bachelors and everything, they could look at PhD programs which combine the masters and PhD aspects and basically give it to you at one go, which is quite interesting in its own way. But in my case, I'm done with my bachelor's and master's together, which is what ISA Mohali offers in its integrated program. And thus, I am somewhat in the limbo stage of being after a master's degree, but yet to start my PhD. So that's what would be like a broad picture of myself. And uh, to say based
Okay,
on what,
right. So
yeah,
just a minute, Anshuman. Yeah. I'm
yeah.
afraid there may be a technical glitch right now. I am unable to see you. Can you check into that?
Okay, one second. But is my screen visible though?
Screen is visible completely, yes. Your camera, however.
Okay. Huh. Okay, it's saying that I can't share my video while screen sharing, so that might be the case.
Okay, that's completely all right. So,
Yeah,
Anshuman, I noticed that, of course, you're an astrophysicist, you're going into that field.
yeah,
So, from what I've observed in this general population, youngsters especially, they are always interested in astrophysics, astronomy, space from a young age, right? But they're
yeah.
unable to maintain their interest, they're unable to maintain the continuity or pursue it as a
Yes.
career. So, tell me, how did you start laying a plan for it? When did you start laying a plan for it?
That is something I was going to talk about, and that is a very good question because it is, yes, it is very common that a lot of students have, and a lot of kids and children have this interest in astrophysics, astronomy, and just looking at the night sky, because that's the simplest way of like basically getting into science. Because usually when we think
Absolutely.
about science, we have this thing that we will be doing experiments, and that
Hmm.
requires a lab and everything. But in the case of astronomy, all you have to do is just look up to the sky and see what's happening.
Right,
If you have something more than just your eyes, even better. So
right.
that is how it actually ends up drawing a lot of people towards it, because it is the simplest way of basically exploring. And like it if you have a curiosity, it is the first and easiest step towards understanding the world around you. But
Hmm.
then again, it is true that generating that fascination is not enough. It is also required to be retained.
Hmm.
What happens a lot of times is that yeah, sometimes, yes, people are able to retain the fascination, but they are able to find that, okay, I am interested about the universe, but I want to focus on something particular, which is, or
Hmm.
something that I want to answer more immediately, and they go into other fields.
Right.
So a lot of people enter into physics thinking about astrophysics, but they end up doing very different things, like
Hmm.
say even laser physics, condensed matter physics, where they are developing new materials and which can assist in uh, a variety of different ways, because they started out into astronomies, and then they got curious about how the different materials can function in terms of, say, in our on orbit telescopes, like how do they operate, how, what kind of protection do we give them in from the external environment in space, and that drives them to a very different direction. Or it can
Hmm.
be very completely different. Like, for example, astrophysics also gives you a very broad perspective about our world, and then you start thinking that, yeah, this planet is what we have. And people, because of that kind of thought, right now there has been going a very important discourse among astronomers about this, that that is a very good motivator for going into research about, say, climate change. So we see a
Right.
lot of people deviating in such varied ways, and
Hmm.
sometimes it happens that even if people are interested in astrophysics, they are not able to maintain that, and that's probably because of two major reasons. One is that it requires a bit of effort to remain in the field, because you have to do a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, and then look for
Hmm.
research positions like postdocs and everything, and then go further. So each step acts as a filter. Every
Right.
time people are going towards one of the steps, they see if it is possible to go for it, or are there easier paths for basically getting out of the situation of making that decision, because often what happens is that there are other things into consideration as well, like just not about it's just not about interest. Further, the thing is, while looking at the stars and the sky is very fascinating. The field combines a lot of areas. Like, it is not just physics; it also draws from chemistry, from statistics and mathematics, and even and now more and more from data science. So what happens is that because this field is basically like a combination of a variety of the things that people are not so familiar with, it can be quite intimidating. So
I agree.
instead, what people end up doing is that they try to focus on one of the aspects, and they develop an expertise in that direction, and that's perfectly fine. It is in terms of as like among astronomers, it is like you can also contribute to the field, but if you are an expert of one thing, that's also amazing as well. Like, you need not be a jack of all trades, which is kind of necessary for going into astronomy. So yes, it is difficult, and it is there are the path is somewhat long, but in
Hmm.
the end, if you do go for it, it is quite rewarding. Like in my
Right.
case, I had no clue about like how do I go about becoming an astronomer or astrophysicist. I just knew that, okay, this sounds really cool. Like, for the first time I saw the word in an encyclopedia, I was like, okay, that is something that I want to be. But
Relatable.
but that was not something that I understood. Like, how do you, what is the like my vision was limited to, okay, I have my school, I have everything, and that's it. I didn't know what
Hmm.
happens after high school. So
Hmm.
uh, like, there was no
Okay.
connection between school to whatever is there in becoming an astrophysicist. I
Right.
started gaining more ideas about this. Like, I got to know first about, like, okay, there are people there because they're scientists, they need a PhD. That was something that I got to know, but I was not sure what happens in the bachelor's degree. In
Of
11th grade, I
course.
realized that like, I talked to people, and I interacted with a bunch of uh, people that I happened to meet, which was through just going for, say, some science exhibitions, or say, even small events which were being done by, say, the by planetariums, or by the, like in my case in Bhubaneswar, we had a planetarium which had regular events, and we also had the Institute of Physics, which IOP, which also has which had some nice events. And going
Hmm.
there and also talking to my mother, who was used to be in the field of research, but then she changed
Oh,
to the industry. Like,
that's
she had a,
fantastic.
yeah, so she had a PhD in botany, like before, just before she got married. So at
Hmm.
least having all those different people around me
Yeah, a
gave
lot of
me the
external
idea that,
factors influence the decision,
yes.
right?
So
Right.
that gave me an idea, like, okay, so maybe physics, a degree in physics is what I need. And this
Hmm.
physics is what I found interesting anyway. So that's what I went with for going
That's
into
fantastic.
astrophysics.
You're
And
clearly very passionate about. Sorry, sorry. Please go on.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and like I was not completely sure what was happening. Like, how do you go apply for a physics degree? I just knew that, okay, physics is a subject I want to study. What next? And
Hmm.
I just happened to come across the KVPI exam, and we like gave it. I was just to see, like, in 11th, like, okay, I just give it and see how it goes, and it worked. Like that I was able to crack it, and that's how I ended up going to ISA Mohali instead of somewhere
Yeah, I was
else.
just about to ask actually. You're clearly very
Yeah, sure.
passionate about the subject. So, how did it feel when you got into ISA, one of the most reputed for research in India?
Yeah, I was like, initially in 12th, when I got to know that, okay, I can use this KPI fellowship to apply to places, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Where can I apply? And that's when I
Hmm.
started looking into ISAs and everything. And even I see, but obviously, like, it seemed like my rank was not enough to go into ISC, but it also seemed like maybe ISAs were a better fit, because uh, I wanted to I would be somewhere where I can basically explore things at a bit at my own pace, and having a 5-year degree with the coursework spread up across was seemed nice. But then again, I was a bit skeptical, because I wanted to know what would I be doing there. That's not something I knew from before. And thus, what I did was, like, when I was allotted to ISA Mohali, my first thing was to basically start contacting professors there, like. What exactly do you suggest I should do if I join at your college? And like, how exactly are students at your college going to pursue research, say even in particular in astrophysics. And that's how I ended up contacting Professor Jasjeet Singh Bagla at ISA Mohali. And we had a conversation, like quite a long conversation, where he mentioned about different electives, about research, and how do you exactly get into it. And he also mentioned about his dream to basically start up astronomy minors program, and basically along with the major subject of physics, he wanted to give a minor in astronomy, and that seemed quite fascinating. And I was like, okay, sure. Like this place seems to be like one of the best places I can go for exploring astrophysics from right from the undergraduate level. So it should be a good fit, and let's go and just check it out. And one of the good things is that Professor Bagla's dream was actually fulfilled in the form that our batch that is graduating is the first to graduate with astronomy minors. So, like me, along with three other of my friends, we were able to get the astronomy minors. So that's quite nice. And I would expect that while in my when in 2016 it was still at a nascent stage, the ICERs have been building up as places for exploring even very niche aspects, like for example even planetary sciences or astrobiology. And I would expect that it would only grow, and it would grow through more by collaboration. So that's what I'm expecting different ICERs to do, like at different places. Maybe ISA Mohali would be collaborating more with the northern region of colleges, and something similar can be expected in the other ICERs as well. So that's something to look forward to. And it was quite fascinating, and like quite one of the best foundational experiences I could have. Like I don't think I could be at a better place right now if I were not at ISA Mohali. Like this is probably the best that could happen.
That's fantastic, fantastic. Anshuman, so you clearly have a amazing profile right now. Can you tell me something about the timeline that you had to walk through to build yourself at this position, come to this position? Where did you
Yeah,
start?
sure.
What were the steps you had to take?
Yeah, so it is like the process is difficult in the sense that like in the first year right from the first year when I was at ISM Mohali, I wanted to do astrophysics. Like that's why I went there, right? So I was like from the first semester itself I was like, I want to explore astrophysics, I want to explore astrophysics, but I had no clue what the subject was exactly demanding from a student. So in the first year I tried to talk to people in my college, and then I was like, okay, no, I am at ISM Holly. That's great. I can explore here whenever I wish to, but I want to talk to people out, even outside of my college as well. So I started actually emailing people across India that say like, if I want to maybe just come visit and work with you or just learn about your subject, maybe by a small reading project of sorts, like just where I just read through papers, books, and everything, and learn more about this topic and understand like where exactly in astrophysics can I contribute to. But the sad thing was like obviously I emailed approximately 40 people, but there was no response, and or people said that okay, you are just in your first year, you need more experience before you can go into astrophysics. So that's fine. Like what I ended up doing was very different. I went into soft condensed matter physics at TIFR Mumbai, working in a lab, and that was an interesting experience, and I got to learn a lot about physics and even programming there. But it was not astrophysics obviously. And still it was an interesting experience in the sense that it gave me the first understanding of how the scientific method works, like what actually happens during scientific research. And
Hmm.
so in the second year what I want to do was like, okay, I have some idea now. I'll try to kick things up a notch in the sense that I want to take a little bit of risk by not applying to people in India, because I thought that okay, they rejected me a year ago, they might reject me again. Like, what's the point in emailing them again?
Right.
That was not the best of decisions, but I was just into college, and that I guess I was 19, so I don't think it was the best time to be making mature decisions. So I ended up emailing a lot of people, and what a
Hmm.
good thing that happened during that time was that ISRO's Liquid Propulsion Center had a competition called the Touch the Jovian Moon competition, where we had to basically develop a scientific proposal for
Hmm.
a lander mission to one of the moons of Jupiter. So we
Oh,
entered the
wow.
competition. Yeah, so we entered the competition. We were very good at developing scientific equipment and everything, and
Hmm.
went up till the national finals, which was and we went into the top 10. But I realized that obviously, like, our drawback was that while we were very good at the scientific aspects of it, our mission
Hmm.
proposal was not that great at the engineering aspects of it. Like, how would it be designed? What would be the how much payload can we carry, and a lot of a few of those things.
I
So
see.
recognizing those limitations, we were like, we were still happy that we went till the national top 10, but then that was it. Like, we didn't go for the final competition because, again, it was in mid May and we had other things like our
Hmm.
internships and everything. But discussions about this competition actually led me to my second internship position, because the professor wanted to know, like, what did you do in astrophysics that you find so interesting. So we ended up talking about this competition for an hour or so, like at 2 in the night, because he was in the US, and we it finally led to a position. Like, I worked at UC Santa Barbara, uh, based on that conversation itself. So
Hmm.
what he did was he just invited me. He said, what you can do is you come over here. We'll figure out what we will do next. And
Hmm.
what happened in the very first week was we were just reading a lot of text and everything, and we were talking to different people, like different postdocs and PhD students, about what they were working on. And one of them had this cool idea where he mentioned that whenever we are looking at a quasar, like I've shown here as a background light source, it is usually very far away, and we are observing it through gas clouds, which are bound to a galaxy. Like, any galaxy would
Hmm.
have a huge halo of gas clouds spread. Like, here it is not to scale, in the sense that the gas cloud would be actually much larger than the size of the visible galaxy. So
Right.
whenever the quasar is shining through the gas cloud, what we end up seeing is basically whatever has been able to pass through the gas cloud. So
Hmm.
what we observe here and the light that was emitted from here is different. So without any knowledge about what the original light looked like, what astronomers typically do is that they make models of what the quasar should look like, and then try to
Hmm.
interpret the properties of the gas cloud based on what we actually observe. But the issue with that is very obvious. Like, you would easily catch on the fact that they are modeling the quasar based on how it should look like. It is not necessary
Okay.
that the quasar that they are looking at would look just like how they have modeled it. And
Of
thus what
course.
happened is, there are multiple such quasar models out there. Like, there are some models which are more popular, some are less popular, but there are multiple models, and depending on what you choose, basically you get different kind of results for, say, like, how dense is the gas cloud, how much, say, different elements are there. Like, for example, how much oxygen exists, how much carbon
Hmm.
exists in that gas cloud. You would be having a very different picture based on the model you're using. So what he wanted to do basically was to develop this large, not large, I would say it's rather more in-depth program, Python program that we were building, to basically that, given some sort of observations, that real data that we have, we could basically
Hmm.
tell that based on all the models, what is the amount of variation you'll get in the properties of this gas cloud, which in astrophysical literature is referred to as the circumgalactic medium, because it is basically the media around that is circulating around the galaxy.
Right.
So
Exactly. I believe you have papers written about these, published just some months back, right?
yes, we have submitted. That's the thing. Like, I started in 2018. We kept
Hmm.
working, improving the Python packages that we are building, and basically ensuring that the we are not missing anything.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
we have now recently submitted the paper for publication, and a few months back. And I think so. Like, we will be actually adding a few more improvements to the package, and we would be adding a page or two to the paper as well, and that would be
Wow.
out soon. So,
That's fantastic. Looking
yeah,
forward to it. So,
yeah,
Anshuman, I believe all of this work that you're doing right now, it kind of just leads you get into the path of getting a doctorate as well, right?
yeah,
So, so there's this generic recognized pattern to enter research in this manner.
yeah.
Um, but what about some things like nuanced details and tips and tricks and sustainable habits to maintain in the industry. What about those?
Yeah.
How do you go about developing such a network where you can get these tips only from seasoned people? Do you have an element of intention behind it, or it's just something that people naturally pick up while working in the industry?
Yeah, that's quite like a lot of information, and it is quite tricky in that sense. Like, it is not easy, and I would say that even I am in a somewhat learning phase of the same. It's just that I
Hmm.
would maybe have a couple of years experience under my belt now, and maybe that could help. So, for example, like you mentioned, networking and uh, networking. Whenever we hear the word, sounds like a very serious and a very formal word. Like, and this is an image from a Forbes article which talked about 10 important uh, points
Right.
why networking is very necessary for your career or whatever. And that is
Hmm.
quite intimidating and is often actually unrealistic. uh, what it actually ends up being is that if you are at like if you are at your own college and you want to talk to someone who is doing something interesting, like it need not be in astrophysics, it could be in any field of your interest, then even
Exactly.
emailing them and just asking, mentioning that you're interested and you want to know more about, say, uh, whatever they have been working on recently, and basically just establishing a point of contact is the first step that would be necessary. And even
Hmm.
now, like something that I have caught on to recently is that given the uh, situation with the pandemic,
Hmm.
even social media, like say LinkedIn is always there, but even Twitter has started being a good place to actually talk to people and learn about their interests. And even there are
Absolutely.
a lot of research groups which put out like advertisements about, say, they want interns or they want PhD students, and they post that on Twitter as well. So that is, and
Hmm.
you can basically start talking to them there and take it forward from there. And of course, in the end, if you can have an in-person chat, it is perfectly the best way, obviously. So if you're at a conference or a meeting, or if there is an invited speaker and you don't know
Hmm.
what you have to talk to him about, it is fine. Like, you can just say that, all right, like I'm quite interested to do things like you are doing, and this is what my background so far. And you can, like, the more casual you are about it and the more honest you are about it, the more it will be appreciated, in the sense that you need not feign some kind of knowledge from beforehand, because it is not expected at your
True.
stage. So what you can do is just say that, yeah, all this is very cool, but I don't know how it happens. Can you tell me more
Hmm.
about it? And that itself starts a conversation, and that is pretty good. And
Hmm.
if you have a good conversation, if you have a positive interaction, it's best to basically strengthen it. Like, if you talk to someone and you liked it, like say you went to a conference, you talked to someone and it was a good experience, then
Hmm.
in the you can obviously, like, maybe if not immediately, maybe a few days later, you can say that, yeah, you can email them saying that I really enjoyed your talk, and I also like learned a lot from the conversation we had, and this is what
Right.
I plan to do next, and I would be happy to receive your input. Like, basically staying in touch with them. And
Hmm.
even sometimes it happens that and I've seen a lot of students do this, is that sometimes when they get a rejection from a professor who if they have whom they have approached for an internship position, they just ignore them. But sometimes it is good to actually read through the rejection letter, and you'll find that some of them are actually very well toned, in
Willing
the
to
sense that,
work.
yeah,
Yeah.
they just highlight the fact that they are willing to work with you. It's just that at the present moment, they are not able to basically hire you.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
it is good to actually stay in touch with these people, because in the future you can again approach them about, like, maybe what about now, like maybe you can work with me now, like for an internship or a
Hmm.
PhD position, or in the future, like, and even if nothing of that sort works out, uh, it may be that if you remain in the field, you will be crossing paths with them, and if they are
Hmm.
senior to you, they will be at more like at a position where they can basically
Yeah.
assist you. And
Hmm.
so it is, if they have been good to you and they have been polite to you, then it is good to be at least maintain the same. Like, just because they couldn't give you an opportunity doesn't mean that you uh,
It is
become
never to
angry
come.
and
Yeah.
just cut
Exactly.
them off.
So
And yes,
maintenance
like,
of relationships.
yeah, and it is you yeah, basically you need to maintain the relationship. So like, you should not
Hmm.
it should not always be based on active benefits, because that also turns people off.
True.
Like, yes, I agree that we are reaching out to them because we want to build our experience, we want something from them. But if we just focus on that, we lose the touch of uh, the touch of humanity that we have, like the human to human interaction,
Absolutely.
that
Hmm.
connection that we is lost. So
Exactly.
uh, that is also important. And if at any point you feel lost, that you do not know whom to write to or whom to approach, is just to go back to step one and seek new people. So
Hmm.
you need not be in suits and everything and have a very formal discussion. Just maybe if you're holding a cup of coffee and they're holding a cup of coffee, you just approach them and talk to them about it. Like, it's perfectly
True.
fine.
Yeah. So, Anshuman, you just mentioned about networking and PhD opportunities, related
Yeah,
stuff. So, I was just wondering right now, according to your timeline that you showed previously, you have been working on a PhD thesis. It's yet to come.
yeah,
So, it started pretty recently, and another thing that's recent is the coronavirus pandemic, and it's
yeah.
been plaguing a lot of industries with dire consequences, and I'm guessing even R&D was one of them, unfortunately.
Yes.
So tell me whether you had any limitations in developing your thesis, and if there were any for you and your team, how did you come around it?
Yeah, the main effect that the pandemic had was on my master's thesis, because it started in 2020, and my
Hmm.
master's thesis work was basically supposed to be at the Harvard and Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, and
Hmm.
it was scheduled to begin from May 2020, but that was basically not a possibility. And we were supposed to work with the data from the Chandra Space Observatory, which is a telescope, an X-ray telescope
Right.
in orbit
Yeah.
around our planet.
Hmm.
So the issue with due to the pandemic that first cropped up was obviously that I couldn't be there, and the second issue was that if we are using a telescope, it will be relaying the data back to Earth, and the people who are basically gathering the data and parsing it so that it can be usable by astronomers were not able
Hmm.
to go for work because everything was locked down during that time.
Yes, exactly the kind of
So
yeah,
yeah, so what
limitation I
happened?
meant.
Yeah, so what happens in such a situation is that we had to basically adapt our project. We could not gather fresh data. We had to go back
Hmm.
to already recorded data, which was just lying around, in the sense that the telescope is always pointing towards some part of the sky. So they
True.
keep observing different sources of X-rays and tabulating it and keeping it on their databases. So we went
Hmm.
back, looked for it, and indeed there was some data that we could use. And the other limitation was that obviously I was working from India throughout the time, but my guide for the master's thesis was in the US. So we had to
Hmm.
basically schedule work through video calls and maintain a Google Docs form Google Docs document, where we were basically putting up whatever questions I had or whatever work that I did and their suggestions. And sometimes it also ended up working at a bit odd hours, because they would be at work at doing the times according to the US timing. So it would be like about nine
Hmm.
and a half or 10.5 hours uh, behind us. And I had to basically adapt to that and like work late in the night and work with that. But the good
Hmm.
thing is that it actually has led to a lot of interesting things. Like, we developed new data analytics techniques, and we were actually selected to present that at the Chandra Data Science Workshop, which happened just
Oh,
a few days back. And
wow.
it was basically the new techniques that we were applying, and we wanted to showcase it to other astronomers that, okay, you guys can also use this, and that's pretty cool.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
we w- we also were able to, like, we are presenting it at multiple places, and even this would be leading to a paper which we would start working on in maybe a month, or maybe like
Hmm.
we would be aiming to finish it soon, because the
So
master's
your
thesis was done by
thesis,
June.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So your thesis is basically like a lucky consequence of the pandemic. You saw a problem, you try to fix it, exactly like how a person in the R&D sector should work.
Yeah.
Pushing for change, pushing for betterment. That's fantastic, actually. So you also mentioned the thing about rejection. Sometimes you don't get
Yeah,
opportunities. You're not able to get opportunities, right? So
yeah.
working in research and even astrophysics in general, these are very competitive fields. Of course, not it's
Hmm.
not easy. So
Hmm.
people face rejection while applying for universities or projects or publishing journals and in the papers. So, how did you deal with it? And like, what advice would you like to give to people choosing this path based on your experience? Walk us through the
Yeah.
whole process if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So rejections are like I mentioned earlier, like why do people go away from astrophysics? And one of the things I mentioned was that it has multiple steps, and each of them acts like a great filter. When they're
Mm-hmm.
applying for bachelors, when they're applying for masters, for PhDs, every step acts as a filter because not everyone is able to go through that. And sometimes it
Right.
requires more effort than someone like we are willing to give, and that is perfectly fine. But if you are interested and you want to stay in the field, then it is like the best thing to do is to understand that yeah, rejections do happen. Like for in my case, in my last few years and through all the internships that I went through, I had like
Mm-hmm.
100 plus emails and everything that were unanswered or rejected, sometimes rejected very rudely as well, and even by multiple programs. Like for example, while I was selected for the Dadwise program of Germany, I was rejected by even the Indian programs like the Indian Academy of Sciences Summer Research Fellowship and the
Mm-hmm.
Canadian program of my tax. And it is like I would say that it was probably because those are very competitive, and that's something that just happens. And even for
Mm-hmm.
PhD positions, like due to the pandemic, what has happened is that the American universities have uh, basically focused on keeping the funds for projects which are still ongoing, and projects which have immediate results in the form of say so they have been focusing more on the applied sciences research. What this
See.
means is that fields like, for example, astrophysics, theoretical physics, pure math, and others have
Mm-hmm.
actually lost out, and that meant that there were a lot of rejections in that aspect for me when I applied for PhD positions. Even like when I applied to Oxford, I had professors who were willing to work with me, and everything was fine. It was just the issue that they did not have funding. Like we could not get funding for supporting that research. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that remains an issue, and even in general, scientific research is actually uh, s- completely built on rejection, in the sense that what happens, the entire process is relying on the fact that you would be building a hypothesis, you would be building an experiment to test that hypothesis, and if it is proven correct, then all well and good. But then you would be basically trying to figure out different ways to uh, change the experiment, modify the experiment, or
Mm.
maybe change your methodology to explore
Right.
like but what if we do like this, does it fail? So the entire thing is that it's a question of trying to figure out how strong are your hypotheses and how to basically convert them to theories, or if you have already established theories, and how strong are they. We are basically relying on
Mm.
falsification. So what
Exactly.
happens is that while scientific research is aimed to find answers, it is not like an exam. So students sometimes when they approach the subject, approach this field with the perception that they are going to, there are questions which they'll seek answers to, often feel disappointed because sometimes it is not possible to get the answer based on the experiment they have done, or sometimes the answer is not what they seek. Like they wanted to prove something, but they fail, and that is
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine. Like for example, in astrophysics we have large amounts of data being gathered, and sometimes the result is that okay, we went through all this data, but we were looking for this particular thing, like say for example terrestrial exoplanets, and we were not able to find it. That's the result. Like
Mm-hmm.
the result was that they failed in in their mission.
Not meeting your
But
expectations.
yes, so and that is fine, like in the sense that scientific research often requires this, because then at least people will know that okay, if I use this method of searching, and if I'm searching for
Mm-hmm.
this particular thing in this data, then I would not get
Mm-hmm.
it. Because and knowing that adds to the base of knowledge that we have, and thus even if there is failure, it is helpful to the process. But yes, it is
True.
when it comes to at the personal level, it feels it is not really the best feeling. It is competitive, but it is how it is. Like what
It
I
is
would
how
just
it
say is
is.
that yeah. It is best to
Yeah.
accept it because it happens to the best of us. Like there are
Mm.
very competitive PhD programs where students who with even a lot of research experience with excellent people still get rejected, and that's simply because there are a lot of people applying, and people who are judging those applications are also human, and they,
Mm.
based on their perception, decide whom to select and whom not to select. And
Yeah, their
just
own
because
criteria.
yeah, like they have a broad criteria, but it is subjective, and it
Mm.
is always, and thus it is not always because of you. Like sometimes the criteria could be like, for example, in the US, for us astrophysics, in this year's admissions, a lot of funding was basically, the issue with the funding was that it was there, but it was limited to American citizens. So it's not your fault. Like you are applying as an international applicant, that does not mean that you are a bad applicant. It's just that
True.
the external factor of funding is not playing in your favor. uh,
Mm-hmm.
so what I would just say is that but there are opportunities. uh, we only if we limit ourselves to just a few opportunities, it will seem that we are done with it. But it is best to actually look at more and more opportunities, and like eventually you will win the bargain. So
Like
that is
widen the array.
yeah.
Totally, I totally agree. So, Anshuman, some people have already raised their hands at places. So, I'll just ask one last
Okay.
question before the AMA round.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And I think this is something that a lot of people would already want to know, and something that must be covered in in this conversation.
Yeah, sure.
So, just like many people over here interested in pursuing research, how do you even go about applying for a PhD? Like the word in itself is so intimidating, and the process, if you search about it, it's not as clear or as directive as we would want it to be. So if you have any advice or any points that could be highlighted keeping this in
Yeah.
mind, please.
Yeah, applying for a PhD is actually a very complex process. Like even about last year, around this time, this was when I was trying to figure out everything. Like where am I applying to? Why am I applying to that place? And what would I have to do to basically apply to that place? And thus, I would say that from your end, you can start with basically tabulating what your key interests are. Like you want to do a PhD in, say, astrophysics, but what do you want to focus on in astrophysics? Do you just want to work with simulations? Do you want to work with real time data? Or do you want to
Mm,
work with the instruments that are used to gather the data? Like that in itself creates different categories. And then there is more.
true.
Next would be to basically explain your experiences and shape your CV, so that you can basically talk about your entire profile so far in the most concise manner. And lastly, you
Mm,
would basically be looking at places or people you want to apply to. Like say if you are keen to apply to Europe because Europe has direct PhD programs which are 3 to 4 years, or say if you want to apply to the US because you want to have some amount of coursework. So
mm,
you have to look at those places and basically go through the universities where you can apply to. And having a broad idea actually helps in the sense that because each department and each university can have slightly different criteria, so you can be better prepared rather than basically going into it head first and realizing at the last moment that you missed something. So like I mentioned, there are two broad styles of applications when you apply internationally. uh, and that is the American or Canadian style, where what they basically do is that you are applying to a department at large. Like you do not fix a project to work on right at the time of application. Sure, you can mention that, okay, if I'm able to get admitted to this place, I want to work with these 2 3 people. But you
mm,
won't be basically committing yourself that, okay, I'll be working with this guy on this project from day one. That's not going to happen.
mm.
And
Okay.
what they do is that they have coursework for 2 years, and you work on smaller projects with different people before you finalize on the project. This is
Mm,
particularly because what they intend to do is that they want to absorb people who are also applying right after a bachelor's degree. Like you, rather than going for a bachelor's and then a master's and then a PhD, they people can directly apply after a bachelor's degree. And that's
mm.
why, to cover the experience and the coursework of the masters, they spend the first 2 years on that, and then they follow about
Right.
4 years of PhD research. And the funding is
Okay.
usually the funding situation is usually dependent on the institute or the professor that you're applying to. And
Mm,
sometimes maybe that's not enough. so they try to support that with teaching assistant and research assistant positions. Like for example, my I had received an admission offer from UCLA, which was about
Oh,
it
wow.
came yeah, so that was about $52,000 a year, apart from like whatever health insurance or
The
registration in the
benefits,
university and
right?
all that. Yeah, so
Mm.
extra stuff like that, like uh, so that was fairly decent in the sense of uh, for a PhD, for the stipend itself. And usually it is good enough. Like if you're not getting a good stipend, that's basically an clue that you do not want to be in that PhD program. uh, on the other hand, the European program is basically meant for people who have completed a master's degree, and
Okay.
thus they have a much more direct application, in the sense that you're applying to a particular person or a particular project, because you start with the PhD research like right from the beginning. Some of the places in Europe do have a centralized application. For example, the Max Plancks in Germany, they in each city, like for example in Munich, they come together for a particular subject. Like for example, they have the International Max Planck Research School for Astrophysics in Munich,
Where you're
which
going.
yeah, where I am going, which basically which basically has institutes like the Max Planck for Astrophysics, Max Planck for Extraterrestrial Physics, the European
Mm.
Southern Observatory, and universities like the Technical University of Munich and the Ludwig Maximilian University at Munich.
I see.
So sometimes they have centralized applications like that, and even other places like in the Netherlands, there is the Leiden Observatory, which has a centralized application. Like you apply to them first, then they, if you're
Mm.
shortlisted, they give you a list of projects where you can basically choose from, and then there will be interviews, and based on that they select you. So
Wow.
in that sense, the benefit that Europe has is that it has a shorter duration of the PhD, but
Mm.
the negative side is that you would be needing a master's before you start the PhD, and that you'd be committing to a project right from the beginning. The funding is
Mm-hmm.
a bit more secure because it is like from the institute or the professor. Like you do not have to work extra as a teaching assistant or anything for earning. There is obviously the like there are, if you're in a university system, you will be having the option to work, but it would not be something that you'd be doing for maintaining your basically living wages in that sense.
I
So
see. Mm.
for example, and the funding, it does scale based on the cost of living of your city. Like for example, the IMPRS Munich offers, like after all taxes and health insurance and everything, they give about 1,800 euros per month. But Heidelberg, which is a smaller town, is gives around 1,400 per month, because the cost of living of Heidelberg is much lower as compared to Munich. So
Okay.
those are kind of
So,
the things that people can keep in mind.
right. Actually,
Yeah.
the slide has been really helpful and this pretty conclusive and crisp. Thanks for that, Anshuman. And that was fantastic, actually. You built yourself an amazing profile thanks to your perseverance and capabilities. I think I got to know everything I would have wanted to. I should
Yeah.
now open the forum to questions from the audience for some interaction. Okay, guys, I know you must be bursting with questions, maybe related to more of Anshuman's work or PhDs, internships, and that sort. So you can either turn your mic on, raise your hand, turn your mic on, or you can put the questions in the chat box. Ananya, Ananya Pandwadya, hi.
Hi. So I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
First of all, I am interested in pursuing cosmology. So,
Okay.
what do I have to do after my BTech? Or will I need, I mean, do I need to have a bachelor's in, say, physics or mathematics to do that? Or can I do that in my master's after my BTech?
Yeah, like there are people who start with a BTech degree and then go into subjects like astrophysics or cosmology. So the basic idea would be that even during your BTech, it would be helpful if you are pursuing, like if you try for internship positions where you can use whatever knowledge you have right now, uh, and work on some small projects, because that would basically show up in your application, in the sense that yeah, you, while you were doing a BTech, you were also showcasing an interest for these subjects. um, in terms of applying, like yeah, like if you go for a master's after that and you do it something in say physics, that is always going to be helpful, especially if you are like it is essential if you're applying to for a PhD in Europe. uh, and that's perfectly fine. In the US as well, there are places, like multiple places, which are okay with you having a BTech degree, as long as you are able to basically show that you have some research experience as well. And how exactly does that help you to connect with what the PhD programs of in the US have to offer? So it is doable. You would not need extra any after your BTech, but during your BTech, if you do something like to basically build some a profile to in research, then that would be very beneficial.
Right. So, and say if I go for mathematics after this, if I go for a master's in maths, or can I pursue cosmology after that?
Okay, like it will be definitely doable, but the thing is, I guess then if you go for a master's in mathematics, you would be going for a much more theoretical side of cosmology, and
Right.
yeah. So if that's the area you have in mind, then that is certainly doable. Like I wouldn't say that it can't be done. Like there are a lot of people who go into very theoretical cosmology and mathematical physics in general, and that does require a very strong background in math, so it would be doable, not a problem.
Right. Right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm guessing the chat has been muted. Wait. For any questions to be put in the chat, we'll enable it right now.
Good afternoon, sir.
Oh yeah.
Sir, I have a question. Who inspired you
Yeah,
to go
sure.
to the astrophysics?
uh, I would say that it's like inspiration for astrophysics, right? Like that is more like something that built up gradually, in the sense that obviously you would start off with very simple things like from books and maybe even movies and everything, and that gradually, like it was something that I was finding interesting. So my parents were like, okay, if you're interested, you can read more about it, and I ended up getting encyclopedias and more books, more even more say more serious books, and even more popular science books that were geared towards astrophysics, and that seemed interesting. So the first step that like I said, I realized that the first step was to go for a physics degree. So I ended up going for that and trying to actually see what astrophysics is all about. And so far I've been finding it like quite amazing, and like basically it is what I want to do. So that's how where I'm going even now. Let's see where it takes me. Like even after a PhD, there are a lot of people who go to other subjects as well, but if I can, I would be really happy to stick to astrophysics.
Okay, that was awesome. Okay, Rishabh.
Yeah, hello. Hi, Anshuman.
Yeah.
I really love the way you explained everything to us. It was great knowing everything, it broke everything down in small pieces for me. The question that I wanted to ask you was, so what are some of the topics that, since I'm in the IT branch, so what are the some of
Okay.
general topics that I could research, build up on that, would make my CV look better
Yeah.
for the study?
Yeah, what I would suggest is that, because like one of the very important things in astrophysics that I've seen is that you need to be really good at basically programming and things, and algorithm design. So firstly, when you're approaching people that you want to work with, you will have to showcase that even if you're from the IT branch, uh, you have certain skills basically, and how you can basically contribute to that. If they are observational astronomers, you can mention that you want to work on data analysis of data from of whatever, like if they are using say X-ray telescopes or maybe even radio telescopes, and you want to work with that data. Or if you are like if you want to talk to people who are into computational simulations, you can mention that, yeah, this is what I can also contribute to this. What would help in these things would basically be that, like it is good to have at least some introductory level knowledge about the topic. So if you could basically look into some books maybe at least even one book, like for example, the fundamentals of astronomy. I think so. That is by Cartoonen. I can type that in the chat if possible. Uh, and like just mentioning that you are like these are the skills that you have, and you are aware about the basics from reading one or two books, and that's good enough to basically get you at least one or two research opportunities, and that will basically allow you to build your profile even further. Even if it's a small project, it is still very helpful in that sense.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, someone from the chat box, Anshuman, Kunal Vijay is asking, what are the research options for computer science students? In this I would like to know as well.
Yeah, one second. I just mentioned the book. Yeah, okay. So computer science again, like it again builds from a similar answer that what we are basically needing in this astrophysics always is people who can do the following things. One is to basically improve upon simulations that we are using, or basically have analyze the results from the simulations and gather like what are the issues with it and what can be done to improve it, what parts of the simulations are usable, how much of it is realistic and everything. And then we have other people who look into the observational side of things and basically start from analyzing data from the very raw level, like which is the pipeline analysis, and even at a higher level, like they are gathering inferences from processed data. So at each of these levels, if you have a computer science background, you can definitely contribute. And the thing is that you would have to basically showcase that side of your profile. Like, yes, you are not from a physics background. That is like by when you are mentioning your degree, that is obvious. And if you remain focused on that, it would not show well. It is better to focus on the strengths that you have. Like I'm pretty sure, like because of among undergrads at least, like someone in cs in the second year will be much better at understanding how algorithms are designed and how uh, the basics of like programming, uh, they will be better at it as compared to say someone in the second year of physics. So
Hmm.
you use that to your advantage and basically showcase that when you are applying. And if you combine that with say maybe some good, like you get a few couple of research opportunities, and then you go for maybe a master's or a phd in physics and astrophysics, then that you would
Right.
be set in that sense.
Okay, I see. Thank you, Anshuman, for that one. From the chat box itself, Jatin Tekane is asking, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He's in his final year of bachelor's in physics, but he's a bit confused whether to go for a master's program or for a IPHD program. I'm not sure what that stands for.
That's integrated phd.
Okay,
So
okay.
yeah,
So,
so going for an integrated PhD program would actually you can go for it, but if you are not sure whether you want to take an exit after a master's, then ensure that you're going for a PhD integrated PhD program at a place which does allow students to basically take a master's exit. Uh, like for example, at IISA Mohali, we do have that. So if you apply for an integrated PhD at IISA Mohali, you will have to stay for an extra year. Like you'll be staying for 3 years instead of the 2 years that are common for a master's. But after 3 years, you can take an exit. So
hmm,
I would say that you apply for both for a master's as well as for integrated PhD programs. But if you finally accept a offer an integrated PhD at a place, just keep in mind that it is a place where you can basically exit out of the program as well. Because it seems like that is the key point here, that you're not sure if you want to continue your PhD at the place you join currently.
I see. I hope that answers your question, Jatin. Again, Durgashi from Chatbox is asking, what are some of the different branches that one could research and work in?
I'm not sure if it is just within astrophysics or if it is beyond that, because then though it's too much. But I would focus on astrophysics.
True.
Yeah,
Sure.
so we have like quite a lot of fields. Like let's go by sizes. Like for example, one can start with planetary sciences, where you're focusing on different aspects within the solar system and different bodies in the solar system. Or you could maybe go for stellar astronomy, where you're looking at stars other stars around us, or maybe even
Hmm.
exoplanetology, where you're looking at other planets around other stars around us. Then there is obviously galactic astronomy, where you're looking at the entire galaxy at once. Extragalactic astronomy, where you're looking at multiple galaxies and the interaction between galaxies, or even beyond that. For example, cosmology, where you are looking at the universe at the overall scale, or maybe you are looking at the early universe. Um, there are also other new topics, like for example gravitational wave astronomy, where you're looking at black holes, neutron stars, and like how do their collisions actually look like. And this field is also growing in the sense that we are looking for more and more data, and the holy grail of sensitivity in terms of gravitational wave data would be to one day detect the merging of supermassive black holes. So that is what people are pushing for a lot. Like two fields are pushing a lot. Like there is gravitational wave astronomy, there's exoplanetology,
Hmm.
because they're two very fascinating fields. But there are other aspects as well. Like for example, I would be working on the epoch of ionization, which is the early universe, one time duration during the early universe, where gas which had initially become neutralized again because of cooling
Hmm.
becomes reionized by the creation of the first galaxies and first stars, which start radiating energy again. So that
Hmm.
is quite a fascinating aspect, and it has its own role. And there are such many niche topics in astronomy that you could find. So it is just like I would just suggest that if you are very confused, look up maybe say the page of Ayuka, the Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics at Pune, and just look at the research that they are doing. Like that has a quite a variety of people.
I see. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Durgashri. Gopika Anil Kumar has raised the hand.
Yeah,
Gopika, you can turn your mic on. Oh, she texted. Just a second. Gopika is in second year,
easy.
electronic student. Will there be opportunities for her to get into an astronomy field?
Yeah, I would say the easiest way to go for this would be to working with instrumentation people as well as observational astronomers, especially in radio astronomy. Uh, 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 like for example, this is what people at IIT Bombay have been doing. Uh, there is a group for like the growth project, which is looking at transients using radio telescopes mainly. And
Hmm.
what they want to do is basically develop a large scale and network of telescopes, which can then be operated together for detecting events which are very short term in duration. So you can actually they are actively seeking people with an electronics background, because they basically start from the very initial process of building the detectors to gathering the
Hmm.
data to understanding. Like for example, at IIT Bombay, it is Varun Bhalerao who's leading the growth project, and there are even
I
other people
see.
in radio astronomy, which is like I'm forgetting. There's one guy, Professor Deshmukh. I'll just look him up at RRI Bangalore, who started off basically with he was an electrical engineer, and he was a scientific assistant at RRI. But he was so good
Okay.
at what he did was that he then went the professor he was working as an assistant to gave funded his PhD, and now he's a professor there. So
That's
that is,
fantastic.
yeah. So the what you can be like in the end, it is basically about this. The key context here is that you have to look at the skills that your bachelor's degree offers you, and how can
Hmm.
you have to showcase that. There are astronomy tries to derive a lot from a variety of sources. So there are a lot of ways where the field can utilize your skills. So you just need to find the right people who can work with. Like for example, maybe sure, someone who does large scale computational simulations might not need an electrical engineering student, but someone who is working with like who's setting up observatories, who's working with the ground based observatories, would definitely want someone with an electrical engineering background to assist them in the process, and also for in the future of when they are gathering the data to improve upon the techniques used to gather the said data.
Right. Okay. Gopik, I hope that answers your question. Okay. So we have Manika. Manika is also raising her hand. You can turn your mic on, Manika.
Yeah, good evening, sir. So actually, I just have one doubt that people usually decide taking up job and pursuing research. So what do you think on this part?
Yeah, the issue with like that discussion arises because the positions in research are often very competitive, and what happens is that they are not able to find an opportunity immediately, or maybe they find opportunities but they don't want to go into that particular like they don't want to go for that particular job or whatever in research. So what they do instead is to go for jobs outside of research. And sometimes what also happens is that even after a PhD, the student or the person, whoever it is, realizes that okay, I did a PhD, I loved what I did, but I don't want to go into research further. So that's when they choose
Hmm.
to like go for maybe a job or something else. Like for example, because of the competition in the field as well as because of changing interests, almost like I would say around 60% of astrophysics PhD holders are not actually astrophysicists anymore. Like they are now maybe uh, I know personally people who are data scientists at Netflix, at Amazon, at even at
Mm-hmm.
publishing companies like Springer, and some are even in consultancies like Deloitte and others, and even in like other, it is just like a variety of people. There are people who are bankers now and they start off as astrophysics PhD holders. So what it ends up being is like there are two things. Sometimes like one is like your how is your interest evolving, and it is perfectly fine. Like just because you did a PhD, it doesn't mean that you have to guilt yourself to remain in research. You can and you should definitely look for opportunities as they in whatever is you find interesting. And if it is difficult to find opportunities, you have to basically try to adapt your profile to identify what aspects of your skills can basically be translated to the other fields, and using that you can build further. And similarly, like in if you want to remain in research and you are not getting some opportunities immediately, then it's like either you should just broaden your the options that you're looking at, or you can like some other people choose to do is that they temporarily end up taking up some sort of a job and then they go back into research when it's feasible. So it is that the discussion and the issue definitely exists, but like what I would say is that if you are currently in your bachelor's, or if even if when you are doing your PhD, you do not know what things will be like 2 3 years down the line. So it is best that you focus on what your interests currently are and how can you best decide and develop your skills to do well in exploring your current interests. If in the future the interests evolve, you should evolve your skill, like how you showcase your skills accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Skill set. Right. That was very insightful, Anshuman. I hope that answers Manika. Kenneth,
Yeah,
you've raised
thank
your
you,
hand.
sir.
Thank you, Manika. Kenneth, you can turn your mic on.
Yeah, good evening, sir. So
Yeah.
basically, I had one doubt. Like, I love cosmology, astrology, and astronomy like a lot. So, like, I was just wondering, like, I even love astronautics. Like, that's my main go-to. So, I was just
Okay.
wondering if there are any good research opportunities, like in combination of these two, or mainly focused on astronautics.
That would actually, yeah, that is an interesting aspect of the field. Like I would there is definitely research happening in that. Like there are people who are working on basically the development of not just satellites and development of future missions, but also about manned missions and how to basically improve technologies that exist in order to uh, like for example increase the duration and increase the safety of manned missions in space. So
Hmm.
that definitely exists. Uh, Obviously, like if you are going to specialize into astronautics, it would mean that while you will still have a good interest in astronomy, cosmology and fields like that, but it would be like you would not be an expert in that. But that's fine. Like it is what you can do is basically identify what you want to explore the most. Like for example, if you want to explore astronautics and like research in astronautics, you can look into departments like which do aerospace. Like for example, there are very good research projects in aerospace engineering which are happening right now across the world right now. And you can focus on that. You would have some basic knowledge about other fields as well, but it is good to maintain like this. Like this is your primary focus, and then you can have some secondary like focus as well. uh, like for example, even the European Space Agency has a lot of such interesting projects right now, and even they are recruiting like astronauts for future manned missions. And one of like they had a specific category where they were taking astronomers. They have, I know, few PhD candidates who have successfully gone for the final stages of the program. So let's see how that goes. But yeah, it is always doable. Like first you figure out what's your primary interest, and then how you branch out from that would depend on like what exactly you wish to pursue.
Okay, thank you, Anshuman. Keenet, I hope that answered it.
Yeah, I had just one specific one. Like as you
Yeah.
mentioned right now, like European Space Agency is recruiting astronauts for future missions. So,
Yeah.
like, is it necessary to have a European citizenship, or like it's like anyone with a proper skill set and talent can just apply?
Uh, I think what they are doing is that right now, from what I'm aware, like even if they do select someone who's not a European citizen, they would want them to have a citizenship by the time they are going for the mission. But uh, I'm not sure. Like there are specific projects or specific goals for which their tie-ups can be established, or with the say for with India, with Europe, then maybe there will be exceptions and they will allow for that. But right now, European Space Agency is like at the very primary stages of planning these missions. So I don't think they have finalized such things, such goals in their mind right now. But typically, they would insist on something like that unless and until India also takes some amount of responsibility in the mission.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keenet, and thank you, Anshuman. Another Jatin again has a follow-up question. First of all, he's thanking you for your response. It was exactly what he was looking forward to. He has another question. He's asking, it's important to wait, I'll just say it as it is. I had another question which I think is important to many others. What are some other opportunities which one should look for to earn a bit to continue for higher studies?
Okay. Yeah, so I guess that's like beyond just coursework. So what I would like, obviously, I've already mentioned quite a few times like about doing projects, which I've already said that too many times, I think. Like obviously, like you will be doing projects, and it is good like if you can go even for attending a couple of conferences or something, like if or you can like right now there are a lot of things that are happening online, conference or workshop or anything that you can attend that, because not just because of learning, but also because you get to know what people are doing right now in fields of your interest. And you also get to like basically talk to people in these events and interact with them to and basically establish your presence in the field as well through that. Like it is something minor, but and sometimes you might just be there and you might not understand everything, but at least you get to be with the people that you want to be with in the future. um, Apart from that, I would just say that like if you identify some particular skills that you do need, say for example in astrophysics, I've like for my side of things like computation astrophysics, I do need to be very good at programming. Then
Hmm.
like you can always practice that. Like there is no harm in like building a bit more of an experience in that. Like for if you are in something more experimental, say for experimental physics, say quantum optics or something, if there is a lab where you can like basically work with for a short time, you can approach that professor that you, like, guys, this is what I want, like I really want to work up with you, I want to learn more about the field. And that's perfectly fine, like at least it helps you build your understanding of the topic, like or if you already know something, then it helps you improve your knowledge and maybe know about other perspectives in that. uh, Apart from that, I guess like it is like it might vary from field to field, and it might actually become in the end something that, like, if you stumble upon some other new opportunity, then that's perfectly fine. I I guess like that covers pretty much it. Like right now, if there are things online and you can attend them, just go for it. Like that's something I would say.
Well, I guess that answered it, Jatin. You can ask a follow up question in our chat box if you wish to. Ananya, again, I think has a follow up question. You raise your hand, Ananya. You can turn
Uh,
your mic on.
yeah, I had a couple of questions. One of them was, as a computer science student, what
Yeah.
are the options I have for cosmology or astrophysics?
Uh, Computer science, actually, like I said, like it in at least in the fields that are like in the aspects of astrophysics that I've worked on, uh, I would say there is like tons of opportunities. Uh, like for example, they do like the largest number of computer scientists end up going for basically the data analytics side of things, uh, when they are working directly in astronomy, or so the what aspect of like what kind of data they are dealing with basically decides what field of study they specialize into. Like for example, there are people who have been working, say for looking into supermassive black holes. Like for example, the Event Horizon Telescope collaboration. So they have tons of computer scientists with them, and there are also in a completely different picture. If we look at it, we also have people who are trying to improve the detection techniques of gravitational wave astronomy. Like uh, how exactly do you extract the signal from the data? How do you remove error, or how do you minimize error? And that's something that has seen a lot of computer scientists. And even I think so LIGO India, what they have been, they select a few students every year for basically doing some internships with LIGO. And they specifically insist that they only want either computer science students who are doing or like similar background students who can help in data analysis, or they want students who can work with electronics and instrumentation, and uh, and that side of things. So they are looking for engineers basically. And apart from that, the other side of things is the very theoretical simulations, which also require we are working with high performance computing and things like that. And uh, we need a lot of people who actually know what's going on. So if you can contribute to that aspect of things, that is perfectly great as well. And even if you have something that can improve, say for example, the detection techniques that we derive by using theoretical simulations. Like there is this framework that people often build in astronomy, and that is that if first we build theoretical simulations, we understand what kind of data do we expect, and that we use that as a platform to develop a detection technique, which can then be applied to real data. So if you can basically contribute to this entire process at any point of time using your knowledge that you have, then that's perfectly fine. Like for example, that's what I would be doing at Max Planck. And we have other people who have a more computing background, and they basically would be involved with the more difficult aspect of computing, I would say. Like how exactly do the algorithm do they design the algorithm for the process, how to
Hmm.
basically debug the algorithm, how to make it faster, how to make it more efficient while also not losing out on the amount of information we can gather, because that's
Right.
always a trade-off, in the sense that we can either be very in depth, or we can have like a very fast algorithm. So to understand that balance and how to implement that correctly, we do need people with a computer science background, and thus we see a lot of them in astrophysics and even in
Hmm.
cosmology.
Right. And
Okay.
I had just one more question. This might
Yeah,
sound a bit silly, but over the
yeah,
years, I have been interested in many different topics in cosmology. So, say, for example, you talk of stellar evolution, or I have been interested in black holes, or I've been interested in the start of this universe, like the Big Bang. So, I've had
yeah.
many different topics of interest, but uh, how do you pinpoint the one you want to work in, or how did you figure out where you wanted to work in?
Yeah, like I would say that I did not figure out. Like that's what I felt. Like there are some people who what they do is that once they get one opportunity and they like it, they stick to that. But like you, I was like I knew I was interested in astrophysics. I didn't know what exactly in astrophysics I wanted to do. So say for example, the first time I did something, I like that. I like it was quite interesting. That's why I'm still working with them. uh,
Mm.
but the next time I wanted to do something else, like I wanted to like work with theoretical simulations, so that's what I ended up doing. And for my master's thesis, I was like, I'm always working with simulations. Like, what is this? I am always with models and simulations and theories and everything. But what about actually looking at the stars out there? Like, what about real data? So that's what I like. In for my master's thesis, I ended up working with X-ray astronomy, doing dealing with real-time data and basically trying to implement statistical techniques for data analysis. Uh, and now for my PhD, I would be like what like for based on all these different experiences, I kind of know what I want to do. And that was how I shaped my PhD applications. like I have these different experiences. This is what I learned from them, and I gather that my interest mainly lies on these aspects, and using that I applied for a PhD. And again, it was more focused on the things in general that I want to do. Like for in my case, it was that while I wanted to be in computational astrophysics and work with simulations, I wanted to be somewhere where I'm just not working with the theoretical side of it, but actually test those simulations with real-time data. So that is somewhat like a middle ground, like not working directly by of like not directly applying and working with real-time data all the time, nor always just understanding our theories using simulations. I wanted to
Mm.
basically act as a connective tissue between both. And understanding that was good enough. And then I was like focusing on like if I found people who are working on something interesting, I just reached out to them, and based on the offers that I got, I just chose whatever I found the most interesting out of it. And let's see, like if I will do my PhD, it will take 3 or 4 years. If I don't like it completely, and or if there is something else that I want to explore, I would be applying for postdoctoral positions which are like slightly different. Like for
Mhm.
example, if I want to say in the future I want to work with black hole mergers using using real time data, then for sure, like that's something we can go for. Like there's no harm in like exploring a bit and understanding your interests. Like it is actually good that you do that, because sometimes what happens is that like you do explore something which seemed nice, but after actually working on that, you realize that okay, this looked nice, but this was not what exactly I wanted to do. So, or do you understand that okay, I like these aspects of this field, but I did not like these aspects. So that actually lets you pinpoint your understanding and interests further, rather than actually draw from your like overall profile. So it's like if you are interested in different things, do try different things, like not a problem.
Right. This was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you, Anshuman. That was really insightful. Thoroughness, from the chat box, he's asking a question. What were the exams that you cleared, like GRE, CAT, TOEFL, etc., that are needed to be cleared to pursue higher studies in foreign universities? And how was your preparation?
Yeah. Firstly, like the most demanding universities are usually in the US or Canada. Like they are the ones who are like, we want this exam, that exam. They are very demanding. Like I'm
Mm.
saying about out of India. In India, the PhD programs are all through exams, so that is
Yeah.
that is something that is an entirely different beast. But in the US, yes, like you have to typically give like depending on the department, the most stringent departments want the general GRE, the TOEFL, as well as the subject GRE, where you'd be giving the subject GRE in physics. But a good thing is that a lot of these universities have already started dropping these as requirements, and I think so they were only maintaining TOEFL as the only exam they needed. Uh, in the pandemic time, what they did was all the departments, everyone just dropped these exams because they were people were not able to go and give these exams. But I did give the general GRE and the TOEFL. uh, I would say that preparing for the general GRE is good enough for both the exams, because the TOEFL focuses on much simplified English and
Mm.
thus does not require separate preparation if you are already preparing for the general GRE. The
Mm.
general GRE has two sections which are mainly count. Like the writing section is there as well, but it's not too important. Uh, the quantitative section, like the math section, is quite easy. Like if you actually go through it, you'd find that it's not even like about at most you'd find it's about like till 10th grade mathematics. So you would be able to just do it. But then again, because it's easy, it is also like they will expect you to do well. So out of 170, they will expect that you score 160 plus. But that is doable. Like that is very very basic logic questions or very basic math. So what actually causes a hindrance for us as international applicants is usually the English section, the verbal section
Right.
of the general GRE,
Mm.
and that is very like it uses like it does not always use English that we are familiar with. There is sometimes it uses very weird words, very arcane words drawn from like which are not even used that much frequently even by native English speakers. So what I would
Mm.
suggest is that what you can do is use at least use one book, but also like if you're using one book, I would like what I used was from the Manhattan Prep. I think so they called it the 5 LB book of by Manhattan Prep for the general GRE. Um,
Mm.
and it was what I found it when I compared it with the sample papers on the ETS website was that it was more difficult than what the actual exam is. So but then it is also like a worst case scenario prepper. So once you have some practice, say maybe a couple of months practice from that, and if you feel less confident about your vocabulary, you can also use just try to look at remember the meanings of some popular words. Like you can find the list online easily, or even in these books that if you buy a reference book of sorts, and give it about maybe 1 or 2 months at best, and then it should be fine. Like as long as your overall score like 170 170, the total is 340. Out of that, if you are able to be about 310 plus, that's good enough like for application purposes. Because these what we need to understand is that while what we are used to are competitive exams, but these are not competitive exams. These are like they do not decide your PhD application. These are qualification
Mm.
exams, which basically
Exactly.
like if you cross a certain threshold, after that it doesn't matter. Like if you have scored 315 or 335 out of 314 the general GRE, they
Mm.
won't it won't affect your application at all. Like there will be
It's
no
like the
difference
peak.
as such. Yeah, like once you are beyond a threshold, that's just like it's just as cutoff criteria. Like
Mm.
and it is also not a strict cutoff. Like sometimes if you have less than 310, that doesn't mean that you would be rejected as well. So it is a bit tricky in that sense, but also good that it is not necessary. And there are a lot of places, like particularly in Europe, while the UK can be a bit annoying in the aspect that they will ask for TOEFL or even IELTS because that's what they like more.
Right.
Other places like say Germany, they don't give any attention to these exams. They'll be like, if you want, you have given it, you can submit the score, but we would not go and verify that you are actually telling the truth. So just type whatever you want. We will check your English. By if you are shortlisted, we will talk to you in an interview round, and we will know about your English skills by that. So you should actually like look into the departments or the universities where you want to apply for higher studies, like especially for a PhD, before you actually give the exams, so that you know whether it's necessary or not. Like for some of
Mm.
my friends who wanted to apply just to Europe did not give the GRE or TOEFL because it was not necessary for the university they applied to.
I see. Okay. Tarun, I hope that answered your question. Honestly, Anshuman, all of your answers have been so informative and insightful. Your passion for your subject is clearly evident throughout the session. as much as it has been for all the participants who asked the questions. So thank you so much for that, Anshuman. I, on behalf of Sigma Xi VIT, thank you and all the other participants who have joined us this evening. And I hope that everyone has benefited from this informative session. We try to keep it as beneficial and to the point as possible. If you have any suggestions, let us know by filling out the feedback form that will be posted in the chat box, or you can even access the form by scanning the QR code that will be displayed on the screen in a few minutes. Once again, I thank everyone for their participation today. Stay safe and have a great evening. Thank you for joining us, Anshuman.
Yeah, thank you. It was great to talk to you guys. Yeah.